Manager of Opposition Business.
Speaker, I move that so much of the standing orders be suspended as would prevent the Manager of Opposition Business from moving the following motion immediately. That the House 1 notes A. In the House today, the Environment Minister categorically denied reports that last night she said to the former President of Kiribati, quote, "I know why you're here. It is for the cash. For the Pacific, it's always about the cash. I have my chequebook here. How much do you want?" End quote. B. However, multiple sources have now confirmed to journalists that the minister did in fact say those words. C. The minister also told the House today during question time that only, quote, "a small amount of money could be spent on administration under the government's almost $500 million Great Barrier Reef grant, and the administration costs were capped at 5%. D. However, under the government's grant agreement, up to 10% of the entire grant can be spent on administration by the Foundation itself, and a further 10% of any grant money provided to subcontractors can be spent on administration as well. This means that more than $80 million can be spent on administration. And E. Immediately before providing this incorrect information, the minister was handed a note by the Prime Minister, which she appeared to rely on during her answer when she falsely claimed that administration costs were capped at 5%, an amount $60 million lower than what is the case. And 2, therefore calls on the Environment Minister to A. attend the House to correct her answers, as she is required to do under the Prime Minister's ministerial standards, and B. advise the House whether any of the incorrect information she provided was a result of the note handed to her by the Prime Minister. It beggars belief that what we saw today was anything other than the Minister for the Environment misleading the House of Representatives. And when a minister misleads, they have an obligation to come into this place and correct the record. There is no doubt that by now the minister knows she misled. Her own office has a copy of the contract that makes clear more than $80 million can be spent on administration. They know that what was provided to this parliament is wrong. The minister would have been here, I suspect, a moment ago for the division. And the obligation under ministerial standards is at the first available opportunity you correct the record. Well, where is the minister? The minister should be here now correcting the record, because we saw 2 misleads that she needs to address, and one of them appears to have been on the basis of false information having been provided to her by none other than the Prime Minister of Australia. You know, you really start to see what happens when the advertising guy's been put in charge of everything, because it doesn't matter to them now whether what's presented is factual. All that matters to them is that they get over the next hurdle. And that's exactly why a minister who would have known exactly what she said last night to the President of Kiribati, when the words have been put to her in writing by Senator Patrick Dodson prior to question time, so she was fully forewarned about this, when other people who were present have since corroborated the exact account that was presented to her in question time. What does the minister say? Now, sometimes you get weasel words. They say, oh, there was a different context or it was a little bit different. No. The words from the minister today were these: I 100% disagree with what he has said was the conversation. Now, there is no room to move. There is no room to move now. We had a minister provide information to the parliament about what she said last night to the President of Kiribati, then on all the evidence in front of us is just plain wrong. We had that same minister in question time today provide information to us about how much can be spent on administration that is demonstrably wrong based on the contract that the government itself has signed with the Foundation. And when did the government ever tell us, when they gave $500 million away to a small private foundation, that $80 million of that wasn't for the reef, it was for a small private foundation to become a really big foundation, and for a whole lot of contractors to be able to take 10% off the top as well? $80 million. And the minister described the amount of it, that could be spent on administration in these terms. She said, it's a small amount of money. Well, it takes a pretty extraordinary level of incompetence and denial to be describing as a small amount of money even $20 million. But when it's $80 million, that's extraordinary, just extraordinary. So sometimes we come back after question time where someone has provided information that was incorrect. Often at the end of question time, ministers, even prime ministers, will stand up, add to an answer and correct information that they provided that was false. But this minister provided false information about what happened last night and provided false information about what is in black and white in a contract. She then would have come back here, I suspect, for the division, has been available to the House. The Shadow Minister for Climate Change and myself had a media conference a little while ago, more than an hour ago, explaining all of these issues. So there's no doubt that the minister, by the time she walked into the House for the division, knew she had misled the parliament. She knew. And what did she do? Did she walk up to the dispatch box? Did she let people know that she was correcting the record? No. Just walked out again, as though there's not a problem. Misleading the House has been described by none other than the Minister for Home Affairs as a cardinal sin. Misleading the House is the one thing that everybody in Westminster has always agreed is the reason a minister would have to go.
Like saying you support the Prime Minister.
But it has always been accepted that if someone makes a mistake, they merely have to correct the record. Well, the minister's had the opportunity and she hasn't. So it's time for the House to call on the minister to come back here and correct the record, to tell the truth about what was said last night, rather than to have an account of the conversation last night with the former president of Kiribati that doesn't match the version that is corroborated by the other people who just happen to have heard what was said. So the minister needs to come back and tell the truth about what was said last night. The minister needs to come back and tell the truth about how much money this government claimed was going to the Great Barrier Reef and instead is being thrown away for a foundation run by some of their mates to go from being a small foundation employing half a dozen of people full-time to being a foundation that has tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars at its disposal, not for the reef, but for itself, to be able to determine what it's— because don't forget, administration costs will include their own salaries. Administration costs will include their own friends who they choose to employ, and the contractors will have the same opportunity. If you are Environment Minister in that government, of all the things that could be a factual piece of information that you probably should know about, it's probably the Great Barrier Reef Foundation. It's not like it's been a small issue. It's not like it's been a small issue that the concept here that's in front of us, it's not like it's something that wasn't likely to come up in question time. But it's one thing for a minister to be incompetent. It's one thing for a minister to not be able to answer questions that should have been in the question time briefing she should have known, or questions that she should have known because they only happened last night. It's another thing for the minister to then think that ministers in this government are just above the rules, that they can provide misleading information to this parliament and it just doesn't matter. It does matter, and this parliament will expect this minister to come back into the House and to correct the record, to tell the truth about how much money can be thrown away on an administration and tell the truth about what was said last night to the former president of Kiribati.